Next, we will hear from Gustavo Andrade, who is the organizing director at the Center for Health, Environment, and Justice, and our co-host for this webinar. So prior to joining CHEJ, Mr. Andrade worked as a labor organizer with Unite Here and the Change to Win Coalition, leading successful campaigns in Northern Virginia, Los Angeles, and Toronto. In 2009, he became the organizing director at CASA, the DC region's largest immigrant rights organization, and led countless efforts that improved people's lives. Gustavo?
Thank you. Thank you so much, Danielle, and thank you, Jillian, for that. I'm delighted to be here with you today. And I want to thank you to special thanks to all the local PIRG chapters throughout the country who are doing great work. So CHEJ was founded 40 years ago this year by Lois Gibbs, and her campaign at Love Canal was instrumental in getting the Superfund law passed. And as she says it, that polite people tend to get poisoned. The idea being that unless there is a wide effort throughout this country of people who are directly impacted by the pollution to speak out, sadly, we're going to be left with the current situation. So CHEJ's work consists primarily of identifying leaders in Superfund sites throughout the country and bringing them forward, amplifying their leadership, growing committees on the ground of people who have the information and the tools and the training available to them. And also we put folks in touch with one another because, as some of you on this panel may know, and certainly some of the attendees know, that there's nothing lonelier than to feel like you're up against giant polluters and there's not much you can do about it. The sad truth is that 53 million Americans are affected by this, but people aren't affected equally, that the industry has cynically chosen, they've undergone a deliberate effort to target the most vulnerable communities in the country when choosing a place where to dump their waste. Overwhelmingly, people are poor who live near Superfund sites. People are unable to defend themselves through traditional means and lack the capital necessary to solve the issue just by making phone calls. So organizing is not just the best strategy, but it's a necessary strategy for us to achieve our goals. So the health effects of particularly cumulative exposure over many years to the toxics found in Superfund sites is something that is under-researched, but certainly you ask anyone who lives near or in a Superfund site and the stories will make the hair on the back of your neck just raise up. We're talking about people suffering from cancer, kids being born with birth defects, and really atrocious daily fear and pain and anxiety that come from not knowing how your family is going to be affected. And the people paying the price, as I said before, the most vulnerable in the United States. That means that people of color, immigrants, Latinos, Asians, but most like Black folks in the South are suffering from this at hugely disproportionate levels. And that's something that's unacceptable. It's 2021. It's time we fix that. It's time we bring back the polluters pay tax, because that is the heart of the Superfund law. When this got passed in 1980, it was the mechanism by which we were going to fix these issues was through having a targeted tax on the worst polluters in America. This was never meant as a taxpayer-funded effort. This was never meant as a wide tax on all businesses, on large or small businesses. This was meant as a measure simply to hold those accountable who have profited over the last 40 years from dumping their toxic waste. In the cases where, I would say the vast majority of cases, we're talking about corporate polluters, but there are a few cases where the US military, who is one of the worst polluters in the history of the world, is directly responsible for people's pain. And in that case, they should be held accountable as well. So we have to remember we're dealing mostly with the private sector. As far as the EPA is concerned, the lack of funding in Superfund has essentially transformed EPA into a bizarro customer service representative service for the polluter industry, where they don't have the tools available, they don't have the resources, frankly, to clean up enough sites every year, but they do answer angry phone calls from folks, and anyone who's ever participated in a CAG can tell you that those meetings can get very contentious, and rightly so, because the community needs a place to vent their frustration. Now, we can organize until we're blue in the face and yell at EPA for them to clean up the mess. In truth is that their hands are tied until there's enough funding in the program to actually execute all the cleanup that is necessary. So in other words, EPA representatives have been put forth as the recipients of citizens' complaints where they're given none of the tools to address them. So all they can do is sit there, receive angry phone calls, get yelled at while the industry laughs their way to the bank. And that's wrong. That's unacceptable. And that's why we need to make polluters pay. You can follow CHEJ's work. We're delighted to be in this campaign along with PIRG and all the local leaders throughout the country who are fighting and have been fighting so hard to make sure that those polluters are held accountable.